I'm Chad Robinson. This is Craig Butler. We met with the Budget Committee last week in detail to go over the audit, so I'll be brief here. I think you all have copies of the audit report in your information. Page 1 and 2 is the audit opinion. The actual opinion is on the top of page 2, and it basically states that your financial statements are materially correct in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America, which that is a clean opinion, which is what you strive to get. We didn't have any issues. Steve's great to work with. The only thing that we have to report is the segregation of duties, and that's just because you've only got 2 employees. It's virtually impossible to completely segregate duties. So, we have to report that. We just, continue to overlook the financial statements and monitor those at the commission level. So, unless you all have specific questions, I'm not going to go through in great detail unless you've got questions. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, the financial report is in your packet, and I'll again keep it brief. We got several cases, but I'd be glad to answer any questions. But you can see it's this September financial report, so it's a good snapshot to see where we're at, especially on the revenues, because that's 1 quarter into the fiscal year. So you can see the 25% target, and you can see our revenues are trending at 30% after the first quarter. And likewise, you can go down through and see the expenditure categories, subtotals, and see if they're kind of staying in line with that first quarter targeted budget number of 25%. So I'm glad to answer any questions on the finance report or the balance sheet statement in your packet. We got a refund. We got a dividend refund. And that. Yeah, the construction sureties monthly report is in your packet. There's really nothing to report except I want to point out under letters of credit on that 1-page document, Lakewood Acres/Homes, a cul-de-sac project. It's up in the Old Bridge area. That letter of credit expires on November 10th, so it's coming due. That project's been paved. It is done. The county has inspected it. I've inspected it, and I've sent a letter to the county that it's ready to be accepted. Hopefully they can get it accepted before the 10th. They've got a meeting, another fiscal court meeting between now and then. If by chance they can't get it accepted, we would have to ask the developer to post another letter of credit for another year, or maybe we could do a shorter term. But hopefully the county can get this accepted into their inventory, and then we can let the letter of credit time out on its own, and then we'll come back next month and do a formal release of that at this body. But the project is done. It is paved. It is finished. Dwayne Campbell's looked at it. There's no problems. We just got to get it formally approved by the county into their inventory. And again, this is just a courtesy report for you guys. No.
Subdivision approvals.
Put your mic on, Lisa. Just want to remind everybody, if you're speaking, that we have to stay pretty close to these mics to catch it on camera, and you need to have your green button on if you're speaking. Thank you.
Do we want to do more than one at a time, or? Okay. First of all, we have Gethsemane Baptist Church of Danville, Inc. has applied for approval of subdivision on 0.161 acres located at 1111 Sycamore Street, Danville. The plat needed revision in the purpose statement, and to note that it was combining tracks A and B of plat 1064A to redivide them. Track 2 of the redivision is to be combined with the other lands of Gethsemane Church. Track 1 is non-conforming due to the structure encroaching onto the 50-foot build line as established on the plat 1064A. And it's also within the 25-foot build line setback that would be established by current highway business ordinance. So, let's see. The corrections have been made. It's ready for final approval today. You all have to forgive me. Y'all know I've been out a little bit and I'm out of touch here. Okay. Next, we have Anthony and Lacey Jordan. They are dividing their tract number 1 at 209 Airport Road in Junction City. It's a .427 acre tract being divided from the other properties of Jordan. It'll leave .916 acres in the parent tract. Both are fronting on Airport Road in Junction City. Plat note number 8 takes care of the fact that it's non-conforming status for the structures on tract 1 and the parent tract, where they are encroaching into the setback. No utility signatures are required. It's ready for final approval.
We might go ahead and approve those first 2 plats separately. The third plat was reviewed by tech review, but was revised, so it's going to need preliminary and final approval. Number 3 is going to need preliminary and final, and we had 2 late file plats that will need preliminary. So we might go ahead and approve those first 2, and then the next ones we'll do individually.
Make a motion to approve the first 2 plats. I make a motion to approve the first 2 plats.
I second the motion.
And we have a second. All in favor?
I'll do this one, Lisa.
Who first?
I'll do this one.
Thank you.
I'm going to do the third one here. The plat that I believe went out in your packet should look like what's on the screen. This is a City of Danville plat. The city purchased property out on Tuggle Road, corner of Tuggle and Perryville Road, to construct a new water tower. That plat was revised since tech review. There's the version that went through tech review. And one of the notes was to show the water tower that you see now on this plat on the left side or on the west side. In addition, they've moved the lot line back for the eastern track a little bit because their desire is to, again, off-convey the track with the house to sell that. Now that they got the water tower on this other track, they're going to sell this residential lot, small kind of farm track, and they moved the lot line more to the west to give a better backyard for the house. So this is a city plat, and when they did that, the lot that the water tower on dropped down less than an acre, which makes it non-conforming, but it's the city's property. It contains a utility structure. It's never going to be a building lot. So that note is now on this plat that says it's a utility structure and it's less than the desired acre size for ag district. The other lot meets the size because it's a larger ag tract.
How far to the west did it go, do you recall?
Just a few feet. Let me see here.
Because it was 195.61 on the main
Yeah,
before.
let me get it here.
I just was trying to read it. far
how
west
much,
how far did the boundary line go toward the water tower, between the house and the water tower?
About 40 feet.
Okay, so we're not talking huge numbers.
No,
That's
it's not a
why-
huge
That's
number.
why you can't tell by the imagery.
Right,
And
right.
so that gives, in a sense, that gets behind the house 40 feet more yard.
Yes,
That's
it
what
gives
that
the
does.
backyard of the house 40 more feet. And the other thing that we changed, if you'll go back to that's the way the current driveway is now going into the water tower lot.
Yes,
But the city of Danville, and we also felt that it would be better
Oh.
just to take that driveway straight back,
Yeah.
so that in the future, somebody won't have a company truck driving through the backyard, basically, to
That's very
get into the
generous,
water
yeah.
tower. So that's the two things we changed.
okay.
that plat would need preliminary and final approval.
I'd like to, any other comments? I'd like to make a motion to accept it for the preliminary and final in combination.
Boyd, second. Any discussion?
Okay.
All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
Quit signing.
Make sure we have the right one. Walter and Patricia Arnold have applied for an approval of subdivision on a tract of land containing .511 acres. It's located at Zero Vale Drive, Danville. The property is zoned multifamily residential. Mr. Arnold is replatting this property in order to alter the 35-foot building setback that was directed in the prior plat, 220A, to bring it to the current RM2 build line setback of 25 foot. On top of that, a variance has been filed simultaneously and was recorded yesterday to give him 5-foot variance of that 25-foot setback for the building of a duplex unit on the lot that already has, there is one duplex on it already. I think it's 217, is that correct? Vale. There's no number on this one yet, but it is ready for final approval.
What's the rationale behind asking for another variance from 35 to 25 to 20?
So the 35-foot original setback line was platted at a time when that was the rule for
Right.
front setbacks. That had changed to 25 over the years. So it's not unusual to see a plat come in here to be revised to go to the current building setback line of 25. The structure he wanted to build, the second duplex, they worked hard to figure out, and you can see on the exhibit right there, there's a creek and a gas line easement. You can see the gas line easement here, and this is a gas line easement, edge to edge. There's a creek. And he could make the side setback work, but to get the front setback, he needed to move it up to the 20-foot mark. So he filed a variance through the Board of Adjustments. They heard that last week, approved the variance to go from the 25-foot setback to a 20-foot setback, and it'll now be noted on the plat.
That does not exist currently.
Currently does not exist. Yeah, so this building will now, the front setback will be 20 foot by way of the variance, and the plat needs to reflect all of those actions. That we're going from 35 to a 25 foot that's been varied and recorded in book and page, whatever Lisa recorded yesterday. And those notes will be on this plat when it's put to record that there has been a variance and where it's in the location of its recordation.
So that setback variance has already been approved.
Last week by the Board of Adjustments, correct? Had he tried to make it meet the 25-foot, the back corner of the building would have been too close to the creek. It's just tight, the lot's odd shaped, as you can see. This was actually 2 lots at one time. Gas line easement, the creek, so he could make the side setback work, the rear setbacks work, but the front needed to be shifted 5 foot to make to get the building on the lot.
How much is too close?
5,
I mean, how much is too close to the creek?
if you shifted that back 5 feet, the corner of the building would have been about in the creek. Well, Dale can speak to that.
Yeah, if you put it on the 25-foot building setback line, the back corner would be in the creek. Yes. It's still close to the way that it is, but they're gonna build the building is gonna be 18 inches higher than what Vale Drive is. So on that back corner next to the creek back there, it'll be about a 5-foot fill there, so. And this building also is not gonna have a crawl space under it, so water can't, won't be able to get under it. It's gonna be on a poured concrete pad and then go up, so.
All right, is there a motion?
I'll move.
Is there a motion for approval? And we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. 25.
Next, we had a late plat, just barely late, actually. Ruth Carpenter has applied for an approval of a subdivision on a tract of land containing 3.897 acres located at 1325 Coconut Lane, Perryville, Kentucky. The property is zoned ag. This will require preliminary and final because it was a late submittal. The suggested corrections have been made. That was to reflect which adjacent buyer would get tract 2, is that correct? Do you remember? And some signature lines to be added.
It's gonna be added. You see the notation there, it's gonna be added to this piece. To the adjacent farm.
So Lonnie Carpenter's gonna buy it then?
I'm not sure who the
Well,
actual
whoever
parties are, but
that adjacent farm down there is gonna buy it?
yeah, it's being added to this piece right here.
Is that stipulated in there?
Okay. It's in the purpose, and it's noted by those little symbols there that's being combined with that tract. And again, we try not to take late plats, and I know tech review meets, and you guys look at the other ones. This one did just come in, and this one's time sensitive to a real estate closing, as well as the next one is a plat you already have seen that has changed due to a purchase that they wanted to buy a little more land than was initially shown on the plat. So those both came in, and we tagged them on the agenda because they both are trying to have closings. I think this one possibly tomorrow.
I'll make a motion to approve. We have a motion for approval. And we have a second. Discussion. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
I'll do this one, Lisa. And I'll do this last one again. This is the McGurr Farm, but it's shown as a McGurr property on your plat. We saw this plat just a month before last in this configuration that you can see up on the screen. This is the property we just zoned down on Old Houstonville Road for Nick Dunn. Since the time of this plat, it's already been purchased, so the name's different, so that was corrected on this version of the plat. Still says McGurr property, but the property owners are now listed as the current owners. What's occurred is they had this house is for sale, and the intention was they were gonna keep the barn, keep this portion of the property. They zoned the entire property with the goal of putting a subdivision here, and this was how they intended to sell the house. The people that were looking at the house over the last month or two, and now they have a buyer, want it in this configuration. So they, again, want a little different yard. The barns are being torn down, and the piece that was remnant, that now that we're shifting the piece over here, doesn't meet the frontage requirement to keep it as a standalone lot. So it has to be combined with the farm, because again, going back here, you can see it's got a fairly narrow frontage. It's all zoned single family now, so now the frontage requirement's 50 foot. It was 40 when it was ag. So again, since this lot is being reconfigured to accommodate the buyer of the house, this lot can't stand alone with a minor lot line revision. It had to be replatted, added back to the original farm because this frontage wouldn't suffice to keep it as a standalone lot. They'll probably carve it back out later once they get moving towards their subdivision plans. So this needs to be approved as preliminary and final a second time around so they can sell the home to the new buyer. And we just recorded this plat just last month.
Okay.
I move we approve. We have a motion for approval.
I'll second it. It's
We
fine.
have a second. Discussion. All in favor? Passes. Thank you. All right, we've got, several public hearings this morning. The director will present cases. Anyone who wants to speak in favor, speak in favor. Speak in opposition, speak in opposition. If you want to speak, come to the podium, state your name, address. Make your statement. Thank you.
Y'all ready for the first one? Okay, this one will look familiar. I'll go ahead. The applicant on this property at 1103 Houstonville Road is proposing rezone a tract of land containing 2.46 acres from single-family residential to highway business in order to develop a small commercial use. This application was filed in August 11th with a future land use map amendment that you all heard last month. So again, this is going to look very familiar. This is the house at 1103 Houstonville Road on the corner of Jean Drive. The properties you see, this is already commercial. It's commercial across the street. The zoning is single family, and the applicant is proposing to go to highway business with what's consistent in the area. I'll jump to some other maps and show you kind of some unique things. Again, the future land use map shows this property is commercial. That was amended last month. The property next door is shown as low-density residential, although it is commercial and zone commercial. This is shown as low-density, but it's commercial and zone commercial. So the future land use map is not consistent with the actual uses or the zoning. This is the shot of the future land use map from a kind of zoomed out, and you kind of can see the corridor, and you can see this is the property right here that was amended to commercial, and there are 9 properties left in here that are still low density. This is multifamily, and on this side of the road, you can see kind of from downtown as we come down, it's all commercial on this side, getting towards the bypass, and we have one kind of gap in here of still some low-density future land use map designations. When you get to the zoning map, you see kind of a different story. This is the property that's being proposed to be rezoned, and the property next door is commercial. Everything across the road is commercial. And as you zoom out, again, take the same look, you can see from downtown or the split that we pretty much have commercial, industrial, multifamily, commercial down the whole eastern side of the property, and then again, commercial in gaps, and this same section is still zoned single family. So the property owner, again, is proposing to zone this property to highway business in order to put a small retail business of some sort or office in the property and develop in a style similar to the neighboring property that's zoned commercial, maybe some kind of office. This board saw draft conditions last month as part of that future land use map amendment, and we'll go through those conditions here. The applicant's here, and again, but the future land use map is now commercial on the property. Page 2 of your staff report outlines the goals and objectives in the comp plan for your review. Page 4 starts to talk about commercial use in the city of Danville. There is a sentence in there that says recommended for that land for expansion of commercial uses be available in all sections of Danville's urban area. That's in the paragraph up there under commercial use on page 4, and then the future land use map verbiage starts on page 4, runs through page 5, as well as the development review provisions for a commercial rezoning on page 6. And with that, I'll turn to page 7 and take a little more time and walk back through the conditions that now would be part of the zone change request. And again, they were drafted last month, and these would be the formal recorded conditions if the zone change was approved. Articles 310, 3E, and 311-2, as you know, require a general development plan, or as we call them, conditions or concept plan. And the submitted conditions are on the bottom of page 7. The first condition says the applicant agrees to provide no more than 75% total lot coverage through the property. The highway business zoning allows you to cover 90%, so there's a commitment there that the property won't be developed, kind of maxed out with parking and building beyond 75%. The applicant agrees that there could be a little bit of expansion to the building, but not much, that the total building footprint would not exceed 4,000 square foot. Highway business really has no caps on square footage other than how your parking, landscape, and building sets, as long as you don't cover up 90%. So the applicant's committing that the property will be developed in a obviously scaled back version to be able to utilize the existing house for a small retail operation. Signage in number 3 is limited to a monument-only style sign, not to exceed 10 feet in height and 64 square feet. The highway business zone lets you max signage up to 26 feet and 128 square feet per face. This is limited to signage consistent with those smaller businesses that you all know run up and down Houstonville Road. 4 deals with uses on the property. The applicant has agreed to limit the commercial uses to office professional uses or specialty retail under 4,000. The reason why that term is used, specialty retail, we mentioned this last month, that is a zoning category in our zoning chart. There is a specialty retail under 4,000 that's allowed, for example, neighborhood business, and it's referenced, and then there's retail over 4,000, which opens up the door to a lot of other stuff. By limiting the uses to office professional and specialty retail, it's going to allow things like, a real estate office or CPA office or a small retail shop. I'm not exactly sure of the business that's north there. I'm drawing the blank. The business that's right next door. I probably could see it on the sign here, but can't think of what all runs up and down that side of the road. But insurance agents right next door. And again, that's the desire, is to develop something small on this property that would stay in the existing structure and have limited parking on the property. And then 5 deals with the parking, says any new parking areas shall be paved. Additionally, any future utilities would be underground. So those were the conditions that I think this board looked at last month in draft form as justification for the future land use map amendment. And then the applicant's back this month to request the formal zone change. And as you know, we have another case after this where these can be done together. Come in and do the flume amendment and the zone change simultaneously and work together. This applicant chose to sort of break them apart to make sure, that the planning commission was okay with the flume amendment before he kind of went through the time and expense to file the zone change request. So they've come to you in back-to-back months. And the applicant's here. If you have any questions, there were no staff items of concern. Page 8 outlines the findings required to do a zoning map amendment. And then there's a cookie cutter motion on page 10, up or down, that our attorney would be glad to help the board wordsmith in whatever direction you might want to go. And again, we didn't have any calls on this application. When we did the flume amendment, a couple neighbors called just to inquire what was going on and what the signs meant, what the letters meant. And most, I believe all the neighbors were in support at that time. But we didn't get any calls during this cycle in our mail-outs or advertisement cycle. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and the applicant's here if you have any questions of the applicant.
Anybody want to speak in favor of the zone change? Dane Burris. I have a property next door to rental. I have no problem with the zone change. I just make sure it's not like a car lot or, you know, just something that helps the area and not brings it down or something. So I know he has a car lot someplace else, but I just making sure. And I don't know if that's included. I don't know. I talked to you about it before.
Yep, I misspoke on that. I appreciate that. In item number 4, where I referenced what it allows the commercial uses, the applicant did commit that no auto-related services will be permitted on the site. And nor does that specialty retail under 4,000 zoning category allow, for example, auto-related property. But that's mentioned in item number 4. And I did not speak to it.
Auto-related, for example, is auto
Car
sales.
lots, auto sales,
Service.
mechanic, body shop, Jiffy Lubes, detail shops, window
Yeah, that's
tinting,
why- yeah, that's how I just-
whatever
It's a very
we could
broad
think
term,
of.
but
Yeah,
it covers. it's supposed to be
and
a
that's in
broad
the
term.
conditions, right. The goal is to put some kind of office or small retail operation on the property is what the applicant conveyed to us. I appreciate that, thank you.
So, again, if anyone wants to speak in favor of the zone change, please come forward. I'm good with it. If anyone wants to speak in opposition to the zone change, please come forward. Seeing none, we can close the public hearing. Need a motion? Commissioner Floyd makes a motion for approval of the zone change.
Mr. Boyd, if I might suggest the following language to add to the form motion, that the application conforms with the comprehensive plan and that it matches the future land use map. It conforms with the objective of encouraging business development in downtown areas. It respects the character of the existing neighborhood adjoining. And it conforms to guidance for expanding commercial uses in all sections of the Danville urban area.
That'll be fine.
That's Commissioner Boyd's motion.
I'd like to recommend we make sure we state the development terms that were listed there too. Include that if you didn't, Henry, Mr. Smith. The
Commissioner
fact that we
Colley,
have
I-
development conditions, is that in there? Is that how that, is that, make sure that is part of that conditions? Okay.
That's a good point, and it's a practice that I think we need to take going forward, is to put those in the minutes as well, just so that that's part of the public record. So thanks for bringing that up. We'll do that. Thank you.
So we have a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you very much. All right. Number 2. Brandon and Stacy Miller.
Yeah, all righty. So as I just mentioned a second ago, there are applications that come to this board that are joint, future land use map and zone change, and sometimes they're a hybrid. This is a unique case down in Perryville, on a property that you see here on the aerial that's behind you. And what's unique about this is lots of things. So this property, when we got on PVA at this point in time, showed the property in this configuration. I'm doing that. In this kind of odd configuration. There's been a property swap, and it now it's not shaped like this. And these property owners have acquired a portion of this, and this is now part of this, and these property owners own this tract too. So this property's been reconfigured differently, and moving forward, it looks more like this, and this red line is the zoning line. But this piece came off of this farm, is now theirs, this piece is theirs, and this is theirs, and this part of the property at one point all this has been reconfigured in this area of the property. And because of that, we'll start with the flume first. We've got a hybrid of issues here. This is mixed-use residential in the Perryville core area of the community. Then it transitions at 5th Street to low density, and then there's moderate density. And all this is fairly recent. As you know, we revised the Perryville future land use map, I think in 18 or early 19, something of that nature. So it's a fairly new map, and we worked with the whole community and laying those out, especially the future land use categories. This is the farm or the property that you see here, and at that point in time, before these owners owned it, that prior owner wanted some multifamily to tie in here, and this was left low density, and of course, these were different property owners. So at this point in time, the way it's been reconfigured, we actually have two future land use map categories, low density and moderate density. And we'll get into the bigger map in just a second. But to go back to the zoning issue, which is also somewhat convoluted here, these properties are zoned central business. The property we're talking about now is in this configuration right here, has 3 different zoning districts on it. It's single family, agriculture, and central business. They've acquired this property and own this, so now their zoning line is in this configuration, and they have 3 different zoning districts. What Brandon and Stacy communicated to us when they first called us is they want to, on this farm or homestead, and it's a very grand estate. If you go down there with a rock wall and it's just a beautiful house. Their goal is just to get it in one zoning district for the sole purpose to have a wedding venue facility, Airbnb, special event facility. They've been working on it for quite a while, and the goal is just to be able to have special events, meetings, reunions. It's a beautiful kind of farm track. Their real goal was to maybe take it back to agriculture, take all the properties back to ag, but the agricultural district does not allow that kind of use by either a conditional use permit or by right. They could have done the Airbnb, but they couldn't do the wedding venue, for example, or have the special meetings, or, you know, someone have a recital or something out there. That would not be permitted in the ag zone under any kind of conditional use permit we could have ran through the Board of Adjustments. So the real only option that's kind of there to get the uses they desire is to rezone this entire property to central business, which is what most of downtown Perryville is. That allows them to have the wedding venue, Airbnb, special meeting facility and whatnot, and again, keep the farm kind of looking like it is, and have those type of events on this facility.
Central business doesn't prevent them from making it look like a farm.
No, it's already looks like, and again, it's been improved substantially since this aerial, but, you know, there's pavers now, and if you went down there, it's decorative. The wall is historic, the house is historic, and primitive parking's been developed. There's a barn. They want to put a gazebo. Again, it's goal to be a wedding venue, so weddings could be done inside or outside, or different options there, or have meetings or whatnot. So we'll let the applicant talk about their vision here in a little bit. I don't want to speak for them.
Central business, though, is basically along the road.
It's right here.
Yeah,
It's right,
there.
it's
adjacent
on
to it.
their property, because
That's
they
correct.
now
It's already
own
there.
this portion. So central business is already here on their farm, but not here.
Okay.
So the goal, and now they own this piece of property, so this is single family, agriculture, central business. So the goal here is to bring this zoning into one district to allow the use I just described. The challenge we've got, the future land use map doesn't comply. So we suggested the applicant submit a flume amendment and get this all in one flume category as a precursor to the zone change. And that's needed too, because now there's 2 future land use map categories. One is low density, one is moderate density, which would be for apartments. There's no desire to put apartments on this property. It's going to be a single use wedding venue. So what's before you is an amendment to amend the flume to mixed use residential, which would accommodate the central business zoning request, and then the zone change request to central business. Everyone's pretty excited about this in Perryville. You know, we got a lot of things in Danville, but new uses in Perryville are kind of a big deal. The mayor actually resides on this property right next door, and he came in and actually spoke to me the other day and just was hoping the application was moving forward. And again, they've not done a lot of zone change in Perryville, and was inquiring on what even happens next from the city side that they would have to do, because they haven't rezoned a ton of property formally in that community in a while. So we spoke, and again, no neighbors have called on this project. We've had no opposition or inquiries other than what's the yellow signs and why are they in the yard. So I'll walk you through all the technical things, and the applicant's here, and then we've got 2 different motions that we'd have to work through. And then real quickly on page 1, I won't go through all the details, But again, the future land use designation, the mixed-use residential, we don't see it a lot. It's spelled out there on page 1. But it's interesting, in that, about midway through that paragraph, it says this designation applies to the historic core of a downtown areas or undeveloped or developing areas where basic qualities of those existing misuse, where the basic qualities of those existing mixed-use areas are intended to be replicated. So this is a mixed-use area, and again, going back to the Perryville future land use map, on a broader shot, that's what I was going to do earlier, you can see we labeled it, this was our first shot at fixing the future land use map. You can see we took broad strokes at future land use as opposed to parcel-based. But we did make some splits at some streets. We met with property owners. We spent a lot of time, had a community forum to make sure we made the future land use map fit, and then also the way some larger landowners hoped it would work. And you can see the mixed-use residential is this big piece, one big kind of shape. We're right here. So it's 2 parcels to the south that this would be going to mixed use, this entire area. But this whole area is mixed use. This is commercial, low density, moderate density, and one little piece of industrial at the old quarry site. So the amendment would be to make this mixed use residential in this general area that they now own right here, which is consistent with, when we talk downtown Perryville, it's, you know, this is Merchants Row, and you just 4th Street, 5th Street, and we're right at this property right here before we leave the edge of town. It's hard to see, but Perryville's got a circular city limits, and you can see the boundary on this portion of the map there. So we're still in this core of downtown when we're at this property. So that's on page 1. Page 2, again, outlines goals and objectives. Page 3 talks about future land use map and the protocol to amend the future land use maps on the bottom of page 3. The way we evaluate future land use map approvals is the draft conditions or commitments the applicant makes. I want to point out on page 4 one thing. There are exceptions to the future land use map, and it's interesting. We haven't used these very often. We're getting ready to use one in another case, but that last one says rezoning request of 10 acres or less. This is on page 4, where proposed development lies within 2 or more future land use designations. If you stop right there, you'd go, hey, this is one of those situations. There's 2 future land use designations. It should be exempted from. But it's the next part of the sentence says, if at least 50% of the property lies within the future designation, which is consistent with the request. This request isn't consistent with either one of those designations, so we can't use that exception. We have to require the applicant to amend the future land use map to a flume category that's consistent with the zoning request. But if they were trying to zone to multifamily or some other residential, we would have been able to set the flume aside due to the fact that we have 2 different districts. But in this case, they had to amend it to another district. And with that, we'll move on to the applicant's conditions on page 7. And I appreciate them working with us. They, like the prior applicant, have never done a zone change, I don't believe. I'll just be honest with you, they were a tad bit intimidated by some of the process. We worked with them on what conditions were, what they can be, why they're needed, and I think we came up with a pretty good set as a suggested set, and then sent them to the applicant, and they sort of took them to where they needed them to go. And I think they read fairly well to understand what potentially could happen on this property. So again, these conditions are submitted as a basis of amending the future land use map and the zone change request. And again, the terms that were conveyed to us were wedding venue, special event center, Airbnb. The applicant chose in number 1 to basically legislate out. We've talked about this, either say what it's going to be or say what it won't be. The central business district is broad, allows a lot of stuff. So the applicant worked through the whole list and said, these are the things we don't want to see happen on the, or we'll commit will never happen on the property. They didn't exactly want to say the term wedding venue, special event, or Airbnb, because if something else came up, it's a unique term. You never know, it might want to be something that happens on the property. But these are the things that they said that will never happen. It says they're excluding the following uses: detention facility, eating establishment with drive-through, commercial parking lot, animal hospital, kennel, veterinary clinic, vehicle fuel stations, vehicle sales, or burial-related use. Number 2 commits that the applicant will provide no more than 50% lot coverage. The central business would allow them to actually cover 100% of the property as a downtown zoning district. So they're committing that no more than 50% of the property will ever be developed. It's likely it'll be way less than that. Number 3 says the applicant agrees that the total building footprint should not exceed 20,000 square feet. No new building on the property shall exceed 2 stories in height. That square footage that's on the property right now is way below that, but they want to do an extension on their barn and maybe have a second kind of wedding venue or special event opportunity. So there may be an addition to a structure or two, possibly the house. This gives them a little wiggle room to grow a little bit on the property, but not too big. And of course, they have to stay within the 50% cap. So 20,000 is the cap on how much new building potentially would ever be on the property. Signage is very limited. They could have a lot of signs. It says limited to a wall sign. The goal is just to have a small placard on that rock wall as you enter into the property where the pavers lead into the property. It says not to exceed 16 square feet. It's envisioned it's going to be 2 square feet or something.
It's, 2 tall by 6.
2 by 6, so it's 12 is the goal. So limited signage into the future. 5 is unique kind of condition, but it goes back to the agriculture request. The goal, because it's a special venue, you've all been to weddings, I guess, the goal is not to pave the entire parking lot, stripe it like a retail parking lot. The goal is to utilize primitive parking for guests, park on the grass or on the farm. If they have a larger crowd, if it's a smaller crowd, use the driveways they have. So the commitment says customer and employee primitive parking will be developed. Parking areas for deliveries, drop-offs, the wedding party is all paved, and currently that's all done already. So there's kind of a circular drive up front that's pavers, and that's all been constructed on the property. You can see how much driveway they have on the property already. They could accommodate a pretty good number of cars, but if they had an event that had 50, 60, 70 guests, the goal is to use primitive parking on the farm back by the barn is what they desire to do. So, backing up, our zoning ordinance typically says if there's parking, it has to be paved. But the central business does not require parking. It's not mandatory. It's optional. It's hunt and peck parking on the street or parking garages in the urban core. So we thought this condition made sense in this situation as a wedding venue. The desire to pave the whole farm is not theirs or I think the community's. And the primitive parking, I think, works, and they're not required to have any. But they realize they're going to need parking on sites for these events. Or people could park on the street. And if you've been to Perryville, there's even a parking lot just a block up, a small parking lot by the church and some on-street parking. But their desire is to have the parking in the rear of the farm in a primitive fashion. And if they have to pave it, or this board wants them to pave it, they said that's what they do. So, yes, sir.
The exclusion for an eating establishment, do you mean that you you're excluding a drive-through restaurant?
Yes.
But I want to make sure you're not limiting yourselves on being able to make food there that you sell.
No, they're not. We spoke, that says, we're using zoning ordinance terms
Right.
there. Eating establishment with the drive-through is just as you envision.
Yes.
There's another category for restaurants and another category for catering.
Right, you're not excluding catering, you're not excluding being able to serve food at a B&B.
Nope.
Just want to make sure that you're not.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, is the sign going to be adequate enough for you? It seems if you put it on there, nobody will be able to see it as they drive by. I mean, if you was this way, you could see it coming from south or north.
The property itself is very prominent. You can't miss it. The rock wall has been a huge talking factor around Perryville and everywhere. What we wanted to do was not take away the historic portions of the house. So we took the 2 steps, and they were original from 1852, and had them built in the wall. The name will be engraved, and there will be spotlights on it.
Right, just for you, I mean, I just want to make sure you don't
Yeah,
limit yourself
my
to being
husband
able to see
really
it,
didn't want signs in the yard, didn't want anything that could hurt a wedding. Weddings are all about pictures and what you see. And, we didn't want a big gaudy sign out by the road.
I tried to get him to put one up. I said, hey, if it was me, I wouldn't have put that. I said, I want the 30-footer, but it is a nice property if you go down there. And I'll finish up quick enough and let Stacy come up here and you guys can ask her questions, and she's probably got more to add, but it is being done in a unique way down there. And the wall, it is a pretty property if you got a chance to go down there. Like I said, I thought it was ironic. We went down and put our yellow signs up. They just put their pavers in, and I stuck them right next to the property. I said, we really messed up this property, but it's required by the law. So hopefully we can get those down pretty soon. And then number 6 dealt with access. There's 2 access points on South Buell Street now. They're committing they'll stay the same. And that the property be connected to sewer, and it is. These conditions might seem kind of cookie cutter and basic, but you never know what happens in the future, who the owner is. Things could change. So again, these are recorded with the property and run with the property, kind of like deed restrictions into the future. And we wanted to make sure those were some basic items, and then Stacy and Brandon worked on those and wordsmithed themselves on some of these numbers. Again, no staff items of concern that we had. And then the findings are outlined on page 8. There are 2 motions in your packet, one for the flume that would need to be addressed first, and then the second one on the zone change request that Henry can help you with. I'll sit down and let Stacy come up here, and I'll be glad to answer questions you may have from a staff perspective, and you guys can ask her any questions you might have on her facility.
Stacy Miller, 1352 Logan Road, Gravel Switch. You have any questions? Any curiosity about it, or? So, my daughter and I, it's our business venture. Weddings have became fast. Some venues try to pack 3 weddings a weekend. One thing we will not do, there will never be more than 1 event a weekend. You get my facility for 3 days. So as far as extreme traffic or any of that in Perryville, that will never happen. It'll never be, ever, more than 1 event per weekend. Really not even booking it out during the week. I think we've had some realtors come to us, sometimes they do off-site auctions or whatever, and, asked if that's something we could be interested in. We won't do one-day rentals. That's just how we want to do it. We don't want it to be such a traffic hindrance for the neighbors around Perryville that they're aggravated or complain about it. And that's just how we want to do weddings. We know.
What size reception do you envision seeing?
Do what?
What size receptions do you envision to see?
Probably 100, 150 people. They get the entire ground so they can pick and choose where they want the wedding at. There's the front porch, that's a big common thing, the barn, just out on the grounds, there's gazebo. So they come to me and they rent my place. They bring their vendors, they bring their party planners, whatever. We can be coordinators if they want it, but it's kind of to give a little more freedom in weddings. A lot of places you're limited to who you can have. And we want to make it more family-friendly, a little easier on the families. A lot of places you have to be out of there by midnight. I want the bride and groom and family to go home and sit back and think about the memories that happened that day and come back the next morning to clean it up, to turn it over to me at 5. That's really about it.
Did you say indicated about 150 people that they have on there? Music, I assume, sounds just typical
If they
weddings?
choose to
I
have music.
Yeah, I've got 3 daughters that married a while back, and I just
Okay,
enjoy
so
all
you
that.
know.
I understand very well.
When we went through her wedding, my sister owns the showroom in Lafayette Engineering here, and they purchased a farm for Kamira's wedding. We decorated for 2 weeks to make her dream, and most little girls have that dream. You can't accomplish that, getting the venue at 10 a.m., and you have to turn it back to them by midnight. You can't make what they envisioned in their head, and as parents, you want to give them what they want. By doing it this way, they have all night Friday night to decorate, all day Saturday, 1 round of event insurance. You don't have to get a separate, policy just for your rehearsal, because when you have multiple events on a weekend, that's what has to happen. You know, everything can happen in one spot, but not in one spot. So you could have your rehearsal dinner next to the house in the courtyard and the wedding on a whole different other property, and it not ever really, you know, be tied together. That's, you know, I know, like I said, we decorated for 2 weeks to make her dream come true. And, you know, I got to sit back and enjoy it and come back the next day because my sister owned it. But in a lot of places, you got to be out by midnight. You know, they've got another one coming in at midnight that takes possession, and you got to be cleaned. You got to have everything out, packed away, put up, and it's almost impossible to make that happen for the weddings this younger generation wants. So we wanted to make it more about what's happening. You know, a marriage is a big deal. It should be celebrated and enjoyed, and the memories absorbed. You know, the parents are wedding off their children, and you should be able to get to sit back and enjoy that. So that's the direction we're going. We have had people come and say, oh, I think you would do better if you rent it, you know, by the day. I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. And if that's what you're looking for, then my house isn't for you. And that's just that. Yeah.
I'm a musician, and so what type of music do you envision happening? Because, I mean, there's all different levels of noise
Right.
that go along with that, decibels, and,
The property
I just want to
itself.
alert you to that because sometimes it's a problem.
Right, right.
I know you're far enough away, I think, that, you know, maybe.
Most younger people do DJs. I don't foresee a lot of bands. It could happen. I don't foresee it. There's a lot of trees. The front, it's oddly quiet to be right off 68. We have several large trees in the front, several in the back, and it really, you don't hear the road traffic. It really helps to keep the noise down. Right now, the going thing is DJs, and I kind of see that to be the continuing
Get
thing.
'em
We have talked with the police department.
Right.
in Carrollville, and they have said if there are any noise complaints, that they will come to us, let us know. And if we
Yeah.
need to set curfews for our wedding parties, that they have to turn the music down. by
We
a
can do
certain
that.
point, We'll do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to avoid that, so that, you know, it doesn't become something that people start doing just for your sake. I mean, it's
Right.
necessary. 'Cause
Well, and Brian, the mayor, lives right next door. We have a good relationship with him. We have a really good relationship with Parker, the cop down there. Brian, he'll, you know, we've told him, come to us if you think, you know, if you hear something, let me know. And we have an open relationship on that. So the contracts with our brides can always be revised and amended depending on situations that could come up.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's something that you want to have in there, and I think it's great. But you just, that's one, I mean, I've been involved in a lot of different events, and sometimes, you know, you're in the middle of something you don't want to be in the middle of.
Yeah, you can be. We actually, my husband and I, the house directly across the street, we bought that right before we got married 24 years ago. And we looked at this house and loved it. Miss Chambers was the owner for years, and we got lucky. I mean, it just came to us the right time, and we have a big heart for Perryville, and I want to see it grow. I want to see things continue to come in because it's such a great town. Businesses are leaving, and COVID has done so much to shut down small towns. And I wanted to bring outsiders in to come and see what all Perryville has to offer, to want to, you know, visit there and go eat at the Salted Honey or whatever. I hope that it helps to build Perryville.
Ms. Miller, I want to ask Steve a question, which I think might answer what Commissioner DiMartino is talking about. Are there specific use standards that will deal with noise or anything like that, or is this just a local control kind of issue?
That'd be a local
Okay,
control
fair enough.
issue. And Perryville is active in that. And again, I appreciate them saying they've talked to Parker. And yeah, if there's an issue, they'll have to deal with the Perryville Police
Okay.
Department. And
I was
their
looking, I
resident
didn't
next door.
see, but, okay.
We live only 7 miles away. Our home is not that far away. We can be up there in 10 minutes. With any given issues, we have Parker and Brian's numbers in our phone. We can, you know, call them. And they know the same for us. So I feel like we've kind of talked to everybody around there that if, there's any issues, they know to come to us.
And the entrance is off of South Buell, in and out.
There is 2 entrances.
are
We
there.
do have iron gates that will be installed this week.
Okay.
The entire property is enclosed in a 3-plank fence. And the paved driveway is exclusive for the bride and groom. Nobody, it's beautiful. It's a
It is
poured
beautiful.
cobblestone.
It is beautiful, yeah.
That won't be used as much as the other, but we do have remote control gates that will keep the property shut off. When we're not using it, I've kind of worried myself since we've had it of just mischief kids getting in and doing stuff, since we're not there all the time. So those gates are actually being installed this week.
And those are where you get your service items through those gates also. So there's no back entrances, so to speak.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just say one other issue. Weddings are unique. For example, if you had a farm, anyone can have a wedding on their farm as a one-off weekend type thing. We don't regulate that, but the reoccurring wedding venues obviously need some kind of approval. We had a wedding complaint last weekend before. Gentleman has a barn. It was just a wedding one time. But yeah, there were fireworks at midnight. And
Yeah, a little
I don't know if it was Skinnerd and fireworks package or whatever they bought, but it was obviously a rowdy wedding that our phones lit up Monday. What's the deal? But it truly was one time, and that can happen anywhere. We don't prohibit weddings or gatherings on your farm, but if it's going to be a commercial endeavor like this, reoccurring, it needs a zone change. So.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak in favor of this amendment? Please state your name and address.
Dale Shepperson, 1370 Brownfield Road, Pearable. I don't know if any of you all have been through Pearable in the last little bit or not, through this area. It's right off of, this property's right off 68. I've been in Pearable for 50 years. This has always been a prominent estate, if you will. The last few years, it's sort of been in disrepair, and Stacy and Brandon bought it. Like I say, if you drove by it lately, it's a gorgeous piece of property, and they're trying to do everything right. And like she said, to bring people to Pearable, I think it's a great idea, and I just want to take myself off of AGE Engineering, but to give that plug because it is great for Pearable. That's it.
Anyone else wish to speak in favor of the zone change? Anyone wish to speak in opposition? Anyone? At this time, we can close the hearing. Do we have any further discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the future land use map amendment based on the testimony and documents presented in this public hearing. Proposed to approve amendment as amended directed to amend improvement outlined in chapter 9 of the comprehensive plan. And further, I request that the motion include a summary of evidence and testimony presented by the witness at this public hearing.
And we have a second. Is that sufficient?
I would suggest that we add a note on the compatibility of the property with the surroundings, and we could say that because of its proximity to commercial uses, the fact that the property indeed incorporates land that is zoned central business is compatible with the surroundings. Also, the applicant's conditions permitted uses will limit intense uses that would strain the capacity of infrastructure or services.
Do we add it to the motion? We have a motion, and you're okay with the changes that we made to the motion for your second? Okay, so we still have a second, we have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
Second motion.
There's a second item.
Okay. My bad. So we'll need a second motion for the zone change.
Mr. Chairman, not having heard any testimony in opposition, I presume to offer a suggested motion in favor. If any movement wants to adopt this, I'd welcome that, but I'd suggest moving to recommend approval of this zone map amendment to adopt the applicant's conditions and to find that the application is compatible with the comprehensive plan, it matches the future land use map, and it meets comp plan objectives favoring development in downtown areas, infill development, and furthermore, it respects the character of the neighborhood because the limitation on uses in the applicant conditions and limitations on access points and paving of parking lots will also blend with the neighborhood.
I'm sorry, Henry, what was that? Was that a motion?
Yes, that's my proposed motion. That's my proposed motion for any who would adopt it.
I'll make Henry's motion.
You have to repeat it verbatim.
I'll repeat that motion. What Henry said.
I'll second your repeat.
Okay.
So we have a motion, and we have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Motion passes. Thank you all. Good luck.
Good luck.
Okay. Available County Planning Commission agenda paycheck.
Yeah, so this is a very unique case. They're all unique, really, but this one's really unique and a little complicated. We're gonna have to get down in the weeds a little bit. And the first thing you might notice on this request, it says the Danville County Planning and Zoning Commission. That's us. Our co-applicants on this application with Jennifer Paycheck, who's right here behind me. And I'm explaining why we have this situation and why we're co-applicants on this. When we say we're co-applicants, it's the staff put their name on the application. You guys are obviously the board. We waive the fees on this application and would incur the recording cost fees if it's successful, and we're going to explain why. This is falling under the zoning category of really inappropriate zoning or zoning, but it really is a zoning error that was somewhat established by way of the Planning Commission. So we're correcting a zone situation that's got a weird history here that I'm going to walk you through. And there may be other properties like this in the community, but Ms. Paycheck brought this to our attention. She has a business. They do interpreter services here in the community. Prominent building right here that you guys know right here on 2nd and Broad. It's been a business for several years. It was zoned to be a business. However, it was converted by way of a text amendment by this body that made it non-conforming. She was not aware of that and went through the cost and expense to zone this property in 2007 to get it commercial. And now it's for sale. And in the day-to-day showing of the property research, it was discovered that the property is actually zoned multifamily and is no longer zoned commercial, and I'll explain all that. So her desire was to get it back to commercial, and she called and said, what do we have to do? I was aware of the situation that goes over 3 zoning ordinances that created this problem after I was hired, and figured this out after a year or so, that this exists, and suggested that, again, we be a co-applicant, let the Planning Commission take the lead on correcting this problem with you. We'll take it to the Planning Commission and see kind of what flies. It is complicated. I'm going to try to walk you all through this stuff. It's a lot of terminology. It's going to be a little messy. But again, her goal is to get it back to commercial where it needed to be or was officially rezoned. And we're going to slightly make the request to central business because it fits better with the downtown than probably going to a different zoning district that really was probably zoned before that evaporated a few years later. So with that, I'm going to walk you through some stuff, and it gets a little complicated, and hopefully you guys will understand all and ask any questions. I'm going to start on page 1 of the staff report because I wrote the zoning history to try to summarize this, and I'm going to show you some charts. So again, this is 201 West Broadway. Property size is 0.82 acres. Its current flume, interesting enough, is multifamily duplex. Again, we won't really talk about the flume just yet, but the future land use map for this property was relabeled duplex, although it's not been a duplex, and it was zoned commercial 14 years ago. The current zoning is R3. The proposed zoning is central business. And I'm going to walk you through the zoning history. So we're going back several zoning ordinances. The one we have now was adopted in 2020. The one before that was adopted in '04. The one before that goes back in the 80s. The single-family duplex zoning, or as we know, R2, was the original zoning for the property. So way back whenever it was R2. And then in 2004, when the zoning ordinance was completely rewritten for this community, the R2 district was converted to general residential small lot, or what we used to call GRB. So that happened in 2004. So in that point in time, the property was zoned GRB. This property owner rezoned this property in 2007 to NCC, or at that time was called Neighborhood Center Commercial. And then you see here that was revised by a text amendment in 2011 that basically it was commercial and then it became multifamily. So what we've got is in '04, she had a property zoned duplex. In '07, she zoned it to a district in our zoning ordinance that was commercial. In '07, then there was a mistake found after that I'll explain in a second, where there was a conversion problem in 2004. Everything was converted in error, and it had to be fixed. And in fixing that district, they eliminated the commercial zoning that she applied for in '07 and '11. And it went back to multifamily, which in a sense made her property non-conforming at that point when it was converted in 2011, unaware to her. And then, of course, the NCC district that existed from '04 to 2019, we converted back to R3. So it was R3, became NCC, went back to RM3. So with that, I'm going to jump to these charts and show it to you in a visual situation so you guys can see this stuff. And when I first started in 17, I guess I said '07, I'm glad it wasn't that. I inherited a zoning ordinance at my desk, and this was the NCC district. It was in my book in 2017. Although I didn't figure out for about a year that this wasn't the zoning district. It was amended in '11, but it was never put in the book. That's one of the reasons we revised the whole zoning ordinance in 2020. We fixed a lot of small problems. But this was the zoning district in 2004, and you can see right at the bottom, there's the adoption date, and it was called Neighborhood Center Commercial, and it says it was planned commercial in Danville, and you can see commercial, office, hotels, restaurants, drive-throughs. Some things weren't allowed. The next page, even as conditional uses, daycares, gas stations, nightclub, bars, on and on and on. That was the NCC district in 2004. In 2007, Ms. Paycheck filed a zone change to go from her duplex district to that district. And this is the findings and the requirements, and it's hard to read right there. But as you get to this page, you can see, again, she agreed to conditions, she zoned it commercial, and the Planning Commission approved it. And the interpreter business was then legally on the property and has been on the property. So then what happened after '07 is very complicated, and we'll start with this. So I'm not sure who started this, but somebody realized that in 2004, the R3 district, when it was converted to NCC and made a commercial district, it was a mistake. That the R3 district was multifamily, and this '04 ordinance converted it to NCC, which meant now it was commercial. So that meant every property in Danville that was R3 now was a commercial property. Some property owners took advantage of that between 2004 and 2011. They said, hey, I had multifamily, now I can do a daycare, or I can do a restaurant or whatever. Some property owners between '04 and '11 rezoned their property to this district, like this property owner, specifically to do commercial. So you had two situations going on. Again, properties that changed by way of the error and others that were rezoned, and then the error was found. Attorney here locally, I think, raised this issue back in '09 or '10, brought it to the Planning Commission, explained what had happened. This affected, I'm not gonna say hundreds of properties, but could be, because everything was R3 in this town, all of a sudden was commercial, which shouldn't have been for, at that point, 7 years. And some properties were rezoned that then were unrezoned when this amendment was done. And right there it is, right in yellow. It talks about that whereas Section 562 Neighborhood Center Commercial permits or commercial uses, and it says, whereas by inadvertence and mistake, all properties subject to the jurisdiction of zoning ordinance which had previously been R3 were converted to this district in '04. And so then, what it also then says is, whereas the zoning map discloses the property designated as NCC is actually, should have been residential. So I understand why the fix was done this way, and I'm gonna show you this in the next page. But what could have been done is the map could have just been fixed. The staff could have just dug in and fixed all these problems and revised the map. So everything that had been R3, they should have maybe put in the, at that point, I guess it would have been the NCRA district. And everything that they made NCC that was now commercial should have been rolled back to multifamily, or the people in the interim that made it commercial should have just stayed NCC. But they chose a different option as opposed to kind of address the map. And interesting enough, again, this document was not in the zoning ordinance when I started here. It was in another file, and we had it, and the staff actually helped me understand this amendment that was done. And you can still see it's in underlined form because it was an amendment. There's the underline, and you can see what happened. In 2011, the NCC district, where it said commercial, was retitled Neighborhood Conservation Classification, and it was rolled right back to single-family, duplex, and multifamily only. So if you had a piece of property in 2011, when this amendment was made, and you had built commercial that was allowed by the ordinance, you now were non-conforming. Had you zoned your property, like this applicant did, to commercial, you now no longer had commercial, you were non-conforming. So we're trying to correct this non-conformity situation. This is the next page. There were other districts created at that same time, in NCRA, B, and C. And again, one of the options is that maybe the staff could have said, well, let's just move these to the right districts. But fixing the map, and by the way, again, this affects possibly hundreds of properties. I have a list of all the R3 properties that are affected, all the properties that were built commercial during that interim, and the properties that were zoned during that interim. And you would have had to fix all of them, come in here and fix the map, and it would have been fairly cumbersome, and I don't even think we had a GIS product at that time. So the goal was to just, by text amendment, kind of undo the mistake, but in the same time, it created nonconformities for other property owners. So we're here today to bring this zone change to you to try to correct that, so this property owner can get her property back in the commercial zone for an existing commercial use, so it could be sold.
So we are addressing just this one property.
Just this one
That's
property,
fine.
correct. So I'll go back to the map and just real quick show you a couple other things. This is the property right on the corner, Second and Broad. The future land use map actually shows it as duplex. But the reason the future land use map is important is it shows commercial is right across the street. The zoning district, again, doesn't really match the flume, but the zoning, as you can see, is actually R3 duplex, but right across the street, everything's commercial for downtown. So our suggestion is to convert this property from R3, a non-conforming commercial entity, to central business, which will make it kind of function as part of the downtown. One of the other things we had to address were the conditions. There were conditions adopted in 2007 with the zone change. They were kind of basic in nature about doing a site plan and some parking. So we suggested there be new conditions because those conditions don't really apply today. And we asked the applicant to consider conditions that kind of repeal those conditions, and I'll show those, and then establish new conditions on the property with this rezoning to make sure there are at least some development conditions that stay with this property as we move forward. So with that, I'll jump back to the staff report and just go to the conditions, and hopefully we can wrap this up. I'm glad to answer any questions. Won't get into all the comp plan and the goals and objectives, all that's in there. I want to get to page 5 first in your staff report. This, again, is one of those exceptions. One of the things we allow as an exception to following the future land use map is correction of zoning map errors. And then even the next one, residential rezoning requests for non-conforming parcels are less than 5 acres in size and are compatible with existing residential land uses. Again, either one of those exceptions kind of work, but in this case, the zoning's inappropriate. This was zoned commercial. It was rolled back to non-conforming. The exceptions apply, but again, we can set the future land use map aside altogether under the inappropriate zoning option. Page 6 of your staff report, I want to get into the conditions. Again, I appreciate the applicant working with us. This is a complicated kind of situation, but the conditions that we put together, I think let the property go forward either as the business it currently is or if it's sold to another business. Number 1 is specifically to deal with those prior conditions. It says these revised general development plan conditions replaced approved conditions recorded as part of the commercial rezoning approved by the city of Danville dated 11/26/07. That repeals those other 4 prior conditions and then reestablishes them with the next 6. Again, the applicant is similar to what you heard, legislating out several things that will never occur in the central business zone that would not be compatible with this part of the downtown. And you can see those things, commercial parking lot, eating establishment, detention facility, et cetera, et cetera. Building cap on the property, kind of what it is, 2.5 stories, square feet. Parking, be limited to the existing parking, no new parking. Monument sign, kind of what's there. Access, 1 access point on Second and connect to sewer. Again, just some basic conditions that we know at least can run with the property as it moves forward if it's sold 1, 2, or 10 times in the next 50 years.
I assume there's an error in just the wording of number 2.
Could be.
I mean, the detention facility, I assume, doesn't have a drive-through?
That is, you're right, that's a typo. It's detention facility should be comma, eating establishment with drive-through. Yep, that's a typo. We just cut and paste from the other one, and it should say detention facility, comma, eating establishment with drive-through. And again, that's why we're co-applicants on this. I made the decision and talked with Henry about, you know, us taking the lead on this. This has been a little complicated for the applicant to maybe convey to the commission or explain. And really, she wasn't actually aware of the text amendment or what had happened in 2011. I've got a long tutorial on this issue from a local attorney, Merle Clark, on what happened back between '04 and '09 when this mistake was discovered. Henry and I have talked about it. Bruce and I have talked about it, and what was done in 2011 to correct that mistake and get all these properties back in their right zoning district. But unfortunately, even as we leave the hearing today, there are a number of properties that are in the same situation, which I guess we could just wait till they come to us and say, hey, what happened to my property? How come I'm not commercial? Or we could maybe try to go out and address, maybe in this situation, maybe just a dozen some properties and try to get those all converted to a district that more fits their current use. There are other properties that are in the same situation. Again, some were built, some were rezoned to, but they all changed when the text amendment was revised in 2011. Henry, anything you want to add to all that?
A question for you, and I might have missed this early in your presentation. Did this particular property come up because Ms. Paycheck is wanting to make a specific change to the property, or is it just
She's trying to sell it,
Ah,
and
there
there
we
was
go.
some research and verifying the zoning, and when we told her it's R3, she said, how's that possible? I zoned it commercial in 2007. Am I speaking out of turn on that, or?
No, that's right.
She called and said, I just want to make sure my zoning's right so I can convey it in these sale requests, and we says R3.
Right.
I'm not gonna say your hair stood up or anything, but I think she was surprised that, how's that possible? And we had to explain to her how that happened.
So these could come to our attention lot by lot like
Could
that,
be.
or we could take the initiative
And try to fix
Yeah,
them all.
Sure.
I'll let you, sorry, jump up here and say anything.
No, that's all. We thought about listing it, because we were thinking about moving. And then, when my lender told me that, if
if we bought the new building, we wouldn't have to sell the previous one. And now I don't know if I'm gonna sell it because I'm kind of, you know, we've had it for a really long time. And so we might keep it and that way I can I just don't want to see something that I've spent so much time on just kind of go downhill. I don't want that to happen. So we might keep it and rent it out, but still I want it to be the appropriate zone. And when they said it was zoned residential multifamily, I was like, absolutely not. I have paperwork that proves that I rezoned it myself personally here in this room. So, and that's when he brought to my attention that somebody changed the zone without telling us in 2011 or when it was. So that's why we're here.
You're interested in renting it as a commercial building, or?
Yes. Yes, only as a commercial building because every other building on the corner is also commercial. They all are. So we feel that it's a good commercial building because of the location being right across from KU.
I think we should try to do something that grandfathers all these people in, because they shouldn't have to go through this, and it'd be a waste of everyone's time to just do a case-by-case basis. I mean, and then you end up with, you know, all these different regulations that might come into being, but maybe that's the reason to do it separately.
They are grandfathered in. So every
Okay, so-
situation that exists out there is technically
Okay.
non-conforming or grandfathered in.
Okay,
The
good.
problem is that's not good enough sometimes for a lender or in a sale
Yeah.
or a property owner that went to the expense to get it rezoned in this situation. But everyone that right now might have a business in R3 can continue. That's what's confusing when you, as she just described, all this is zoned multifamily, but there's businesses there because from '04 to 11, you could do a business in
And
what
the-
used to be R3, which became NCC. But there are people that really want their property in the legal zoning for different reasons. And so it's probably likely they're going to come to us, but if we could identify them, we may just bring you a whole package of 10 parcels and say, hey, these are ones we ought to get in these districts, but we would want to talk with each property owner and get their permission to convert their property even still.
And
think
I'm more
also
like that suggestion, is you do it as small quantity increments, so it doesn't burden the process of activities,
Right.
because we still need to maintain the activities going through.
But also, we should not have any expense to the owners.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
I mean,
we,
So that's in there, because they shouldn't be held responsible for anything, except
We-
just keeping their
we
property up.
we did waive the fees and agree to pay the $50 recording fee
Okay.
if this is approved to get it recorded. She did go to expense in 2007. I think a rezoning of that style was about $1,100 plus survey costs plus recording fees. So she did have it rezoned, surveyed, and done in '07, and brought to our attention. And yeah, we'll keep these exhibits and probably bring them to you guys at a different time because I'm sure there's other properties. Maybe if we get a slow agenda, I'll bring you that master list and show you all the properties that were converted, and you can see, because we've got the addresses of, you know, we can easily now with GIS pull our whole map and just grab every R3 property and list them, and then the ones that are multifamily are simple because they're now in the right district. But everything that was built or zoned that's different, like she mentioned, those are businesses across the road, but the zoning map shows them as multifamily. We could show you that all of these are in the wrong zoning district. There's churches, daycares, small businesses, shops, catering businesses, dozens of different businesses that were developed between '04 and '07, and '11.
And yeah, I agree with you, we need to clean it up.
Yeah, I
But the
mean-
question is, how fast do you clean it up?
Yeah,
So,
What I
yeah.
don't suggest we do is we take the zoning ordinance and gut the zoning district and swap it in something else, because there's always something that else is in that district. It was the only fix that really made sense at that time in 2011, because there were so many properties. There would have been no way to fix the map, because we had a hand-drawn map at that time.
let's get back on.
We're done.
All right, so we had the presentation. We don't have anybody who to speak in favor or oppose, so I think we pass through that. So, do we have any other questions, or do we need to entertain a motion? If someone wants to entertain a motion, and Henry works with that for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the zoning map amendment characteristics and to address the aspects And we'll include the testimony and documents that we've got in the record here about and then, of course, make sure it does apply to the flume, which I believe it does. It is certainly consistent with our adopted goals and objectives that the comp has. The development review process and development conditions are very key, and they're very important to include along with and that to state very clearly that the existing zoning that it is today is inappropriate. We need to convert that back to what it was.
I would add that no flume amendment is necessary because we're correcting a map error and adopt the applicant's conditions.
Yes.
That's our motion. Second. Commissioner Moore has a second. And, any further discussion on the motion? All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry for the inconvenience.
No problem.
Advisory committee report, none. Personnel committee report, none. Budget committee report.
Budget committee met, as you heard, with the auditor. And at the same time, the last item in your packet, our audit contract or proposal timed out with this audit proposal. And we asked our auditor to give us a new proposal, and that is in your packet. And the budget committee looked at that, talked about that briefly at that budget committee. And I'll let Terry or Jeff or Rita talk about that. That's in your packet, and you see it's a multi-year proposal, similar to the last one. And the audit costs do go up over the years, similar to the one we were under. And so that is in your proposal, and I think the budget committee supported that proposal. Glad to answer any questions, but we would formally need to adopt this new 3-year audit plan with the same auditor to move forward for next year.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the proposal from Kermall Road to auditor for their proposed audit fees for 2022 or through 2024.
Second, have a motion and a second, all in favor? Motion passes. Any other new business?
One item, we talked about, the next planning commission meeting is November 24th, which is the day before Thanksgiving. I know some of y'all start your Thanksgiving break tomorrow, I guess. I don't know. Not us. So we're ready to go on the 24th if you need us to. We've already got 2 zone changes filed, already sitting in the office, and the filing deadline's not till next week. So we already got 2 sitting there. So we need to have a November meeting. What the chairman and I spoke about briefly is we put this on the agenda and discuss possibly moving that date either back a couple days to accommodate Thanksgiving, or what we have done in the past is we've actually moved it forward into December, maybe a week, and combined the December and November meetings. We've done that in the past. But if you want, we just want to verify that you want to have the meeting on the 24th at 9 o'clock. That's Wednesday before. Or we could move it Wednesday back. Tech review, we would know that's a day we have, no one else is in the room. So we could move it to the December tech review date, put tech review somewhere in front of that, and move it back, and maybe we don't have the December meeting then. We sort of combine the 2.
I thought you said tech review was the day prior.
Week
It's-
before. 2 weeks before, I'm
2
sorry.
weeks before on the same day.
So whatever,
If it's 2 weeks before, you can already have tech review,
yeah, we would have tech review.
and then we could do it on the 17th.
Yeah, we could do it on November 17th. Assuming we can get this room, that's the 3rd Wednesday, I'd have to verify. I think Historic Preservation meets in there. We may have to go to a Thursday or Tuesday or something odd. They were, or we could push it back to the dates we already have reserved in December, which we could make a December Planning Commission meeting that would be the tech review date, which would be the 2nd Wednesday in December.
We know the day before Thanksgiving wouldn't work.
Works for me and Lisa and Henry.
Do we have a show of hands of people where it works, or do we want to
we just thought we'd bring it up just as a courtesy, just in case people are traveling, and that's an issue. The applicants filed the cases assuming we're gonna have the meeting, and,
I also point out that's school day off that day.
yeah.
So you do have, if you've got kids and grandkids, you'll see that.
My wife's traveling, so me saying there's planning commission means I get to stay home, so I don't have to go to the in-laws. But
Oh.
if y'all can move it, I'm stuck going then. No,
I really think we ought to move it, is my opinion.
we've done it in
And-
the
and-
past, actually, so,
And to the first, to the Wednesday, where we have the tech meeting, which is the second Wednesday.
yeah. We,
They-
yeah, but the
Well, I
problem is
was referring-
we can't go to tech meeting early because we can't get the advertisement done in
Correct.
time. We have to go to into December sometime to make the advertisement
I was
work.
suggesting to move the Thanksgiving Day, the meeting before that we have here, into the December
Tech
tech
review
meeting,
slot, yeah.
Wednesday. Because we're going to have the same issue during the Christmas holidays when you get down closer.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the December P and Z date, but it's similar.
Yeah.
So you're talking about combining the two in the middle of December?
That's right. And we did that a couple years back. Or, like the chairman's saying, we could move this back a week in November and still make our advertisement work with our filing deadline. Or we could move it back to Monday or Tuesday of that same hot Thanksgiving week. Maybe Tuesday would work.
I
maybe
can
Monday
work
would
better earlier in the week than the Wednesday. That's the only concern I have.
We just have to check on the room availability. That could work to make it Monday or Tuesday.
The first Wednesday in December is the first, after that.
It shouldn't be. No, it could work. We could do that. Yeah, that'd be fine. And then tech review could meet early that Thanksgiving week.
Well, the other thing to think about,
Yeah, we do.
yeah.
It'll be a special called meeting too, so.
You say you'd rather combine November, December, do both at the same time?
We could. Because that day you just mentioned, that's the filing deadline for December. So if we moved it to the 8th, we would know what might be coming in December too. So if any plats show up, we could just do all the business on the 8th. Yeah, correct.
Steve, when you did that last time, do you put the word out to engineers or
Yeah,
anything?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, what's the consensus? Okay, why don't you want to combine the two meetings?
Okay.
We just didn't have one last December.
No, we actually canceled that. We didn't have any cases that one, yeah.
Okay, so the consensus is we'll move it, we'll combine the two, and then we'll just find out.
Yeah. So let's
What's gonna be best for you?
Let's make the 8th the target. Any day works for us, and then I'll email everybody. I'll check on the room availability, and let's say it had to go to the 9th. I'll email everybody, and we'll just sort of work through it like that. But it'll probably work on the 8th, because that's normally when we'd have tech review, and we know no one's in this room on the second Wednesday of every month. Third Wednesday, they have historic and parking and other things.
Do we make a motion to alter our meeting date? I'll move that we combine the November and December meetings for planning and zoning to the 8th of December.
Yeah. And if there's a conflict, we can go downstairs.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second, to alter the date for the November and December meetings. All in favor? Okay, motion passes.
No, we'll work through tech review. We'll get that ironed out with the committee. We'll just set a date on that.
Okay. Any other announcements?
Unless any of the members have anything extra.